The water boiled with a strange light. From the depth of the great river, a tall figure rose, her hair dripping, her belly heavy, her eyes glowing like the moon. But it was not her swollen belly that made the people gasp. She was holding something wrapped in golden cloth, pulsing with a light so bright that even the midday sun seemed to hide behind the clouds. The villagers who had pushed her into the water stepped back in fear. Their plan had been simple: get rid of the unwanted woman and her unborn child. But now she stood before them untouched, her dress dry as if the water had never touched her, and in her hands was a gift that could change the fate of the entire kingdom. The king himself, seated on his carved wooden throne, rose to his feet. His voice trembled as he stepped forward, removed his royal crown, and bowed low before her. But what could make a king bow? What had she brought back from the river that turned even her enemies pale? Long before that day of the river, before the bowing and the whispers, the village of Amr was a place where everyone knew everyone's name. It was a land of red earth and tall palm trees that swayed like dancers whenever the wind passed. The people were proud farmers and fishermen, and every evening the air was sweet with the smell of roasted yam and palm oil stew. Life in Amra followed the rhythm of the seasons, planting, harvesting, and the great New Yam festival, when a whole village gathered in the square to dance until the moon was high. There was peace, laughter, and plenty. Among the women of Amra, none was more beautiful than Adana. She was not only beautiful in face, but also in heart. She helped the elderly carry firewood, taught little girls how to braid their hair neatly, and was the first to bring food to a neighbor in need. But beauty, as the old ones say, can be a blessing and a curse. Adana had caught the eye of Prince Abika, the king's nephew. He was a tall, handsome man with a charming smile. But behind that smile hid a prideful heart. At first, the whole village celebrated when he asked for Adana's hand in marriage. "Our Adana will be a queen one day," they said. But Adana had refused him. She had chosen another, a humble fisherman named Kalechi. He was not rich, but he was kind, and his love for her was pure. They married under the old Irako tree by the riverbank, and though they had little, their laughter filled their small home. For a time, all was well, but a shadow lingered. The prince's pride had been wounded, and a wounded pride can be more dangerous than a spear. One cool morning, the women of the village gathered by the river to wash clothes. Adana, her belly round with her first child, was among them. She hummed a soft tune as she scrubbed a wrapper, her bare feet in the cool water. Two women, Nena and Obi, whispered to each other nearby. They were relatives of the prince and had never forgiven Adana for refusing him. "Look at her," Nena muttered, "walking as if the earth belongs to her." Obi snorted. "She thinks her fisherman husband can protect her? Let us see if she can swim with that big stomach." Adana paid them no mind, focusing on her washing. But when she bent to rinse the cloth, she felt rough hands grab her from behind. Before she could scream, the world turned upside down. The river swallowed her whole. Cold water closed over her head, and panic gripped her chest. She struggled, but her belly weighed her down. Her lungs burned for air. Somewhere above, the voices of Nena and Obi laughed. And then a shadow moved beneath the water. It was large, powerful, and drawing closer. Adana's heart pounded as the current pulled her deeper away from the sunlight. She tried to fight, but her strength was fading. She knew she would not see her husband again. She knew her unborn child would never take a breath. And then she saw them, eyes like fireflies in the dark water, watching her. The shadow spoke, though no mouth moved. "Daughter of the earth, do you wish to live?" Adana's chest was ready to burst. She nodded. The shadow moved closer, and suddenly the water around her began to glow. Her fear mixed with awe, and a strange warmth filled her body. Then she was pulled deeper into the unknown. Adana felt herself sinking, yet it was no longer the sinking of a drowning woman. The water around her shimmered like it was made of tiny stars, and the deeper she went, the warmer became. Her fear was still there, but had begun to change into wonder. Her feet touched something soft, like sand, but when she looked down, it was not the brown riverbed she knew. It was silver, glowing like the moonlight. All around her were tall plants that waved gently without any wind, their leaves sparkling as if dusted with light. The shadow that had spoken to her now took shape. It was a woman, or something like a woman, but her hair flowed like the river itself. Her eyes were pools of deep green, and her skin shimmered like wet bronze. Adana had heard stories of the Mami Wata, river spirits who could bless or curse as they pleased. She had never thought she would see one with her own eyes. "Why have you come to me, daughter of the earth?" the spirit asked, her voice like music mixed with the sound of running water. Adana swallowed hard. I did not come. They threw me in. I am with child, and I fear my baby will die." The spirit's eyes narrowed. Those women, they carried the stench of envy. Adana nodded, tears spilling. "They hate me because I married the man I love. I only want to return to him. Please save me." The spirit studied her for a long moment. Then, without warning, she smiled, and when she did, the whole place seemed to brighten. "You have a good heart, Adana," she said, "and good hearts deserve more than just life. They deserve justice." Adana frowned slightly. "Justice?" The spirit reached into the flowing water beside her and pulled out something wrapped in golden cloth. It pulsed as though alive. "This," the spirit said, "is a gift from the river. Take it with you when you return. Protect it with your life. When the time is right, it will show its power, and those who wronged you will bow low before you." Adana hesitated, looking at the glowing bundle. "But what is it?" The spirit only shook her head. "The river reveals its secrets when it chooses. Hold it close. And remember, what is born of the water belongs to the water." Before Adana could ask anything more, the spirit touched her forehead. The warmth that spread through her was unlike anything she had ever felt. It was life itself. She could breathe again, though she was still deep underwater. Her belly felt lighter, her fear gone. The water around her began to swirl, faster and faster, until she could no longer see the spirit. Then, with a sudden rush, she was shooting upward like an arrow. Her head broke the surface of the river. The women on the bank gasped, their faces pale. Adana stood waist-deep in the water, her hair dry, her dress untouched by wetness, and in her arms the golden-wrapped bundle. She climbed out, her eyes fixed on Nena and Obi. They stepped back as if she were a wild animal. Word spread quickly. By the time Adana reached the edge of the village square, the crowd had gathered, and then the king arrived, seated high on his carved stool, his gold staff in hand. His eyes locked on the bundle in her arms, and then, to everyone's shock, he rose, stepped down, and bowed low before her. Gasps filled the air. The villagers had never seen their king bow to anyone. "What is it that you carry, woman?" he asked, his voice trembling. Adana looked down at the bundle, and for the first time, the golden cloth began to slowly unwrap itself. Inside was... The golden cloth loosened, thread by thread, as though an invisible hand was pulling it open. The crowd leaned forward, their eyes wide. Even the king's guards, who were trained to stand like statues, could not hide their curiosity. Adana felt her heartbeat thudding in her chest. She had not dared to peek since the spirit had given it to her. Now, under the bright afternoon sun, the gift's secret was about to be revealed. When the cloth finally fell open, a gasp rolled through the crowd like a wave. Inside was a small gourd, no bigger than a calabash used for drinking water, but it shimmered as though it had been carved from pure sunlight. Strange symbols ran along its sides, shifting and moving like fish swimming in a pond. The king's voice trembled as he stepped closer. This is not possible. The calabash of Iznwani, it was lost generations ago. The elders muttered among themselves. The calabash of Iznwani was the stuff of legend, a sacred relic said to hold the blessing of endless harvest, protection from drought, and peace among the people. It was believed to be hidden deep within the river's heart, guarded by the fiercest of spirits. But if the legends were true, it could only be brought back to the land by one chosen by the river itself. "How did you find this?" the king asked. Adana, still holding the calabash, spoke in a steady voice. "I did not find it, my king. It was given to me by the river." The crowd gasped again, some crossing themselves in fear, others bowing their heads in respect. But not everyone was pleased. From the edge of the crowd, Prince Abika stepped forward. His handsome face was tight with suspicion. "You expect us to believe that the river just handed this to you? You, a common fisherman's wife." Murmurs spread. Abika's words dripped with scorn, and Adana felt the sting of them. But before she could speak, the king raised his staff. "Silence, Abika. This woman carries what even kings could not retrieve. She has been chosen." The prince clenched his jaw, but said nothing more. The king turned to Adana. "You will come to the palace. This relic must be kept safe. And you must tell me everything that happened in that river." Adana agreed, though a knot of unease tightened in her stomach. She could feel eyes on her, not just curious ones, but jealous, dangerous ones. That night, the palace was filled with activity. Drummers played low beats as the calabash was placed in the royal shrine. Priests chanted prayers of thanks to the river spirits. Servants brought Adana fine clothes and food fit for a queen, though she could hardly eat. She lay in her new room, staring at the ceiling, thinking of her husband Kalechi and wondering if he was safe. Then, just before midnight, she heard footsteps outside her door, slow, deliberate. She sat up, her heart racing. The steps stopped right outside, and then a whisper came through the wooden door. "You should have stayed in the river." Adana froze. The whisper was low, but the venom in it was sharp enough to pierce her heart. She sat still, straining her ears, but the footsteps began again, this time fading into the distance. She got up quickly and slid the wooden bolt into place, locking the door. Her mind raced. The voice had been a man's, deep, controlled, and familiar. She could not be sure, but it sounded too much like Prince Abika. Sleep did not come that night. She kept her hand on her belly, feeling the small movements of her unborn child. The river spirit's words echoed in her head. "What is born of the water belongs to the water." At dawn, the palace roared to life. Servants swept the courtyards, guards marched in formation, and the king's advisors shuffled into the great hall to speak of the calabash and its blessings. But not everyone shared the king's excitement. Whispers of fear and jealousy swirled through the palace corridors. Some said a fisherman's wife had no business keeping such a sacred gift. Others muttered that she had used witchcraft to trick the river spirits. Still, the king insisted on honoring her. That afternoon, he summoned the entire village to witness the calabash of Izwani's first use. The shrine doors were opened, revealing the gourd sitting on a bed of white cloth. It gleamed so brightly that some shielded their eyes. The high priest stepped forward. "By the blessing of the river, may our barns overflow and our people never hunger." He touched the gourd, and the air grew heavy, warm. A faint hum rose from the calabash, and to everyone's astonishment, the scent of fresh yam filled the courtyard. Moments later, baskets of yam appeared out of thin air, piling high as if the earth itself had pushed them up. The crowd erupted in cheers. Women ululated, children clapped, and the men beat their drums with joy. But Abika stood apart, his arms folded, his eyes cold. Later that evening, as Adana walked in the palace garden to clear her mind, someone grabbed her arm and pulled her into the shadows. It was Nena, the same woman who had helped push her into the river. Her eyes darted around to make sure they were alone. "You think the river saved you," she hissed, "but you don't know the truth. That gift will be your curse. The king may bow to you now, but when the time comes, he will be the first to call for your death." Adana pulled her arm free. "I'm not afraid of you." Nena smirked. "You should be afraid of what's coming." Before Adana could reply, Nena slipped back into the shadows, leaving only the faint scent of palm oil and smoke behind her. Adana stood there, her heart pounding. She didn't know what Nena meant, but she could feel it. Something was coming. Something that would test her in ways even the river spirit had not warned her about. That night, as the moonlight poured into her chamber, she woke to a strange sound, the unmistakable gurgle of water. But when she looked toward the corner of her room, she saw it, the golden calabash leaking. Adana's breath caught in her throat. The golden calabash sat where the palace priest had placed it earlier, yet water trickled from its mouth, pooling on the floor. The water glowed faintly, casting ripples of light across the walls. She rose slowly from her mat, her bare feet brushing the cool tiles, and stepped closer. The gurgling grew louder, though the gourd was small enough to hold in two hands. Kneeling beside it, she touched a fingertip to the water. It was warm, warmer than the river had been, and when she lifted her finger to her lips, the taste was strange. Sweet, but with a faint bitterness that lingered. Then she heard it, a voice, faint, like the whisper of reeds in the wind, coming from the water itself. "Adana, time is short." Her heart pounded. Who is this?" The water shimmered, and for a brief moment, the face of the river spirit appeared in its surface. "You have been chosen," the spirit said, "but the gift you carry is not without danger. The calabash's power must remain in balance. If it is misused, the river will take back what is given, and more." Adana frowned. Misused? The king only asked for food for the people. And already his heart has turned. The spirit interrupted. Power feeds hunger, not just a hunger of the stomach. The more it gives, the more they will want. Soon, the calabash will be drained, and when that happens, the river will come to collect its debt. A chill went through Adana, despite the warm night. What debt? The spirit's eyes darkened. What is born of the water belongs to the water. Guard your child. There are those who will try to take him. Before Adana could speak, the water sank back into stillness. The gourd stopped leaking. She sat back, trembling. The spirit's warning gnawed at her. She wrapped her arms around her belly, feeling her baby shift as if in answer. The next morning, she went to the shrine to find the king already there, staring at the calabash with greedy eyes. "Adana," he said warmly, "last night's miracle was only the beginning. Today, we shall ask the gourd for gold. With gold, we can trade with far kingdoms and make Amra the richest land in the region." Her stomach turned. "My king, the calabash is a blessing for the people's needs, not for greed. The river—" He waved a hand, cutting her off. "The river chose you to bring this to me. Now it will serve its purpose." By midday, the priests had begun the ritual. Once again, the air grew heavy and warm. But this time, Adana felt something else, a strange pull in her chest, like the river's current tugging at her heart. When the light faded, piles of gold filled the courtyard, and the people cheered louder than before. But Adana could not shake the feeling that something had shifted, something unseen but dangerous. That night, she left her chamber to find Kalechi. She needed to warn him about the spirit's words, to tell him they must protect their child. But as she turned the corner into the garden, she saw them. Prince Abika, Nena, and Obi huddled together in the shadows. She froze, listening. "Once the child is born, we take him," Abika was saying. "The calabash will obey us then. The river's blessing will be ours." Nena's voice was sharp. "And what about the king? We will deal with him," Abika replied darkly. Adana's blood ran cold. Adana pressed her back against the palace wall, her breath shallow. The night air was thick with the scent of hibiscus, but it could not mask the foulness of what she had just heard. Her enemies were not only plotting to take her child, they were planning to overthrow the king himself. She stayed still until their voices faded into the distance, then hurried down the shadowed corridor. Her only thought was to find Kalechi, to tell him they had to leave the palace before it was too late. But when she reached the quarters where he had been given a room, the guard at the door crossed his spear. "You cannot enter," he said. "My husband is inside," she insisted. "I must speak to him." The guard's voice was flat. "He is gone, taken by the king's orders." Adana's stomach dropped. "Gone? Where?" But the guard only shook his head. Panic clawed at her chest. She turned and ran to the king's private chambers, ignoring the startled cries of servants. She found him seated on a low stool, a platter of roasted yam before him. "My king," she cried, kneeling. "Where's Kalechi? Why was he taken?" The king looked up slowly, his eyes colder than she had ever seen them. "Your fisherman husband has been sent to the far border. There is work to be done, and I cannot have him lingering here while you carry the river's blessing." Her mouth went dry. "You mean while I carry my child?" The king's gaze lingered on her belly. "If the spirit truly chose you, then what grows within you must be important. The priest will guard you until you give birth." Adana felt her heart thudding, fear flooding her limbs. This was no longer about gratitude. The king was treating her as though she were a vessel for some treasure he meant to claim. That night, 2 guards stood outside her door. She could not slip out, no matter how she tried. The calabash glowed faintly in the shrine across the courtyard, as though it were watching her. Days passed in a haze of dread. She was not allowed to see the people, not allowed near the market, not even allowed to touch the calabash. And every night, she heard it. The faint trickle of water, the soft whisper that seemed to grow more urgent. The tide is turning. The river comes for what is hers. On the 7th day, a terrible storm struck. Thunder roared, lightning cracked the sky, and the river swelled beyond its banks. The priests gathered in fear, certain the gods were angry. The king summoned Adana to the shrine. "You must calm the river," he demanded. "Speak to the spirit and command it to stop." Her voice shook. "It is not mine to command, my king. The river gives and takes as it pleases." His face darkened. "Then perhaps it will listen when it sees what it stands to lose." Before she could ask what he meant, he gestured to the guards. 2 of them seized her by the arms, while another stepped forward with a knife, not toward her, but toward her belly. Adana's scream was drowned by a crash of thunder. The knife gleamed in the flicker of lightning, its edge far too close to her stomach. Adana's heart pounded so loud she could barely hear the storm outside. She twisted against the guard's grip, but their hands were like iron. "My king, please," she gasped. "This is madness." But the king's face was set, his eyes wide with the fever of greed. "If the river will not obey words, it will obey fear. I will show it that I control what it desires most." A rumble shook the ground beneath them. Not thunder this time, but something deeper. The golden calabash on its shrine began to tremble, water spilling from its mouth in glowing streams. The guards hesitated, glancing at one another. Adana felt their grip loosen just slightly, enough. She drove her knee into one guard's side and wrenched her arm free, knocking the knife from the other's hand. It clattered to the floor. Before anyone could recover, the water pouring from the calabash surged like a living thing, snaking across the floor toward her. It wrapped around her ankles, warm and strong, and in a heartbeat it lifted her off the ground. Gasps echoed through the shrine as the water carried her toward the door. The king lunged to grab her, but a sudden wave slammed into his chest, throwing him back against the wall. The river spirit's voice filled the air, louder than the storm. "Daughter of the earth, the time is now. Bring my gift of water, or all will be lost." Adana's mind raced. She understood now. The calabash did not belong in the palace, and if she left it here, Abika, the king, or anyone else could use it until the river's blessing turned to curse. The water carried her outside into the rain, the storm lashing her face. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the palace guards running toward her, and behind them, Abika himself shouting orders. "Stop her. Take the gourd." She clutched her belly with one hand, the calabash with the other. The river's pull was strong, tugging her toward the bank. But the ground was slick with mud, and the shouts were closing in. Her foot slipped, and she nearly fell. But then a hand grabbed her, not a soldier's hand, but Kalechi's. Her heart leapt. "You're alive." "They tried to send me away, but I came back when I heard the storm," he said, his voice urgent. "We must reach the river." Together they ran, the wind screaming in their ears. Spears flew past them, one grazing Kalechi's arm. Behind them, Abika's voice was hoarse with rage. Just as they reached the riverbank, Abika leapt in front of them, blocking the path. Rain streamed down his face, his eyes locked on the glowing gourd. "That child belongs to me," he snarled. "And so does the river's power." Adana tightened her grip on the calabash. "Neither belong to you. They never will." Abika lunged. Abika's leap was swift, but the river was swifter. Before his hands could reach her, a towering column of water burst from the river's surface, curling like a serpent. It struck him with such force that he was thrown backward into mud, his spear snapping in two. The river spirit's voice thundered above the storm. "You dare to claim what belongs to the water?" The column of water wrapped around Abika's waist and dragged him toward the river. He screamed, clawed at the ground, but the mud offered no grip. With a final splash, he vanished beneath the raging current. The soldiers froze, terror on their faces. None dared take another step. Kalechi pulled Adana closer to the river's edge. "Give it to her," he urged. Adana stepped forward, the calabash glowing brighter than it ever had. Rain ran down her cheeks as she held it out with both hands. "Great Mother of the Waters," she said, her voice steady despite her pounding heart, "take back what is yours." The column of water leaned down, touching the calabash. Light exploded across the river, turning the storm clouds gold. The water surged into the gourd until it brimmed, then sealed itself tight with a flash of light. The spirit's form rose fully from the river, tall, regal, with a crown of lilies upon her brow. She looked at Adana with eyes like deep pools. "You have done well, daughter of the earth. You have kept a gift from greedy hands and honored the river's law." Her gaze shifted to Adana's belly. "Your child will be under my protection for all his days. No hand raised against him shall prosper." Adana bowed low. "Thank you, great mother." The spirit smiled. "One more thing remains." She turned her gaze toward the palace, and in an instant the river's edge swelled. Waves raced up the path, sweeping over the palace courtyard. The gold the king had demanded, the yams he had conjured, all dissolved into shimmering water and vanished. The people cried out, but the waves left them unharmed. When the water receded, the king himself appeared on the riverbank, stripped of his royal robes, his crown gone. He fell to his knees before Adana, trembling. "I sought to control what was never mine," he said, his voice breaking. "Forgive me. From this day, the calabash and the river's blessing will be honored, never used for greed." Adana regarded him for a long moment, then nodded. "Keep your word, my king, or the river will remember." The spirit gave one last smile, then sank beneath the surface, taking the calabash with her. The storm clouds broke apart, and sunlight spilled across the land. Life in Amara slowly returned to peace. The fields grew green again. The river's fish were plentiful, and the people spoke for generations of the day their king bowed before a fisherman's wife. And whenever Adana walked by the river with her child in her arms, the water would rise just enough to kiss her toes, a quiet reminder that the great Mother of the Waters was still watching.